You're listening to Around the Valley here on KMVR Mid-Valley Radio, the voice of the valley where content is king. My name is Kenneth Ferreira, and today I am sitting down with Kimberly Cobian and Mike Mendoza here to talk about Poetrypalooza happening on August 16th at 4 p.m. right downtown here in El Monte, right on Valley Boulevard. There's a little park there right across from where Lexington meets the Valley Mall, and you're not going to be able to miss it. It's going to be good times had by all. So, Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit who you are. If you were going to hand me a business card for Poetrypalooza Tour 2014, what would it say? And then talk a little bit about Poetrypalooza.
Yes, so I'm the creator and event director of Poetrypalooza. This is our fourth season. It is presented by my writing group, the Zizix Writers. Basically, it stemmed out of how each Zizix writer hails from a different neighborhood in Southern California. And we wanted a way to unite and network with other writers and artists and musicians across Southern California and to bring out the muses, because we believe that inspiration comes in all forms. We celebrate poetry and life and all its muses. That's the key mission of Poetrypalooza.
You mentioned the word muse, and there's a lot of definitions of muse for a lot of different people. I'm sure we know people in our individual lives that have actually been destroyed trying to find the elusive muse. The sirens from Greek mythology were originally called the muses. What does that mean to you? What is a muse? And when you say trying to find it or trying to present it, talk to me about that. What does it mean to you?
For me, it's anything or anyone that inspires you. So it could be a song lyric. It could be a verse in a poem. It could be someone's movement in a dance. It could be someone's theatrical expression. It could be anything that inspires you. Doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Muse is more like a spirit that evokes you to create something new.
Where do you find it? Where do you find inspiration? Inspiration is a powerful word, and to tie it together with a muse. A lot of people, I always thought of muse as the kind of a physical manifestation of an inspiration. But when in those quieter moments in your life, when you're sitting there and you're just getting ready to listen to the Song of the Spheres, as Joseph Campbell once called it, where do you find yourself? How do you find yourself when you pick up that pen? Is it a flash? Is it just a subtle hum?
It's a little bit of both. It's a subtle flash. It'll just strike me. And then, it has to be, my mind just completely clears, and then suddenly I hear myself saying a verse, and I will quickly write it down before I forget it.
It's a bit of a song, if you don't mind. You'd also mentioned we had a great conversation off air just before we came in and hit the play button on this interview, and collaboration was a big word for you off air. So talk to me about what it means to collaborate with somebody. What's the power that you draw from it? What power are you able to lend in a collaboration? And again, how does that tie into Poetrypalooza happening this coming up weekend?
Collaboration, it's when everybody brings their gifts together, shares them, and uses them to create something bigger. We want to inspire other people. During Poetrypalooza, on each stop, we want to show that their neighborhood is culturally and artistically alive, poetically alive. And that there are people here who want to continue nurturing those gifts and teaching those gifts, for those who don't know about them or haven't tried. And collaboration is a larger group effort that makes the muses come out more.
Now I know that the Poetrypalooza tour has just kicked off, right? We're a couple weeks into it. We're one week into it, right? Have you felt that momentum through the collaboration? Have you felt it growing? Talk to me about your first stop. Talk to me about your most recent stop, and then talk to me about the stop coming up in El Monte.
Absolutely. Yes, I have. Our first night was at our Zizix hub, which is Holy Grounds Coffee and Tea in El Sereno. So it's right at the cusp of San Gabriel Valley and Greater LA County. And that night was really full of surprises. So many people showed up, and it wasn't just the turnout, but when we had our poetry writing workshop, led by Joe Morales, people just who didn't think they could write anything, they wrote something and they shared it, and they felt such a thrill. So that is where I find some of that collaboration blossoming and becoming something more than inspiration for ourselves. Last night, the guys and I were collaborating with the folks at Beyond Baroque in Venice through the LA Poet Society that is run by Jessica Wilson Cardenas. She has actually collaborated with us since year one in 2011 when we kicked off. And each year she brings a plethora of talented poets and performers. And it's amazing because I look around in the theater, well, it was a black box theater, and I see a lot of familiar faces, and then I see a lot of new faces, and I'm really happy to see that we are touching people from everywhere, and then we're touching people from different generations too. I'm seeing that the demographic is growing. We have guests ranging from teens to late 70s, early 80s that are showing up and sharing their gifts.
And what's the more shocking of it, the teens or the 70s and 80s?
Nothing is shocking. To me, it's all a big, wonderful blessing.
Fair enough. You had mentioned that, whether you had given a wide range there, and you had mentioned that, some of the people had never picked up a pen before, and maybe this was their first time.
Yes.
Do you get a sense of, there's obviously, it goes without saying that there's an element of discovery there. Yes. That it's not unlike when a child figures out a toy for the first time. You see that entire spirit light up, like brighter than a light bulb. But there's almost a sense of until they find that moment, until they find that pen in their hand, that they have the ability, that it's not some cosmic mystery, but maybe it is, right? Do you find that sometimes people are intimidated just by that first step, or discouraged? And how do you help them get beyond that first step to show them that the pen actually fits in their hand just as well as it can fit in anybody's hand? And I imagine that's one of the messages, whether you meant it to or not, that's one of the messages that I get out of Poetrypalooza. Yes,
absolutely. We have a few shy guests who show up, and then we also have poets who over the years stopped writing because they became discouraged for whatever reason. And those are some blocks for the muses, writer's blocks. So we turn those writer's blocks, and the workshops, we build with those blocks and create something. We're going to build something here. The writing workshops are conducted by really, they're not professors, or, well, a couple of them are actually professors of creative writing, but they're normal people who found new ways to find inspiration to kick those writer's blocks down. It could be as simple as looking around the room, making a list of 5 things that catch your eye, and connecting them in one thought. Any way that we make them simple. We're not writing whole epics or cinquains here. It's a matter of just looking around you and just using what you already have. Your thoughts, the pen, and what you're feeling. That's all. And the workshops are very comprehensive and easy enough for anyone to understand and to give it a try.
Bringing self-discovery to life.
Absolutely.
Sitting with me also is Mike Mendoza with the El Monte Art Movement.
That's correct.
I didn't want to, pigeonhole or, keep my conversation with Kim just in a box and not let people know that, yes, there is another person in the room with us. Mike, tell us about yourself. Tell us about what it is that the art movement is bringing to Poetrypalooza, and what it is you're getting out of the tour so far.
As you mentioned, my name is Mike Mendoza, one of the co-founders of the art movement in El Monte. Pretty much the art movement, what it is we're advocates for our community and wanting to reach out to our community as far as getting them involved in in any kind of art. As Kimberly mentioned, what Poetrypalooza is, basically the art movement is a small, compact version of that, mainly focusing in our community. As for myself, I want to encourage more of our youth to be more involved, as especially our high school youth, especially when it comes down to music and when it comes down to any kind of art, mainly. And our involvement with Poetrypalooza is something that's, I think, is really special.
What's the connection that you see? What is it that naturally fits for you, like jigsaw puzzle pieces, between art and poetry? One can be considered something you do with your hands. The other is that you write. Obviously, there's, you're writing with your hands.
Right.
But talk to me a little bit about what you see the natural connection is there.
The way it connects, primarily, I think, how would I put this into words? It's a lot easier to conceptualize the idea in your mind, but to actually speak on it is, I think it's, my goodness, I blanked out right now.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed that, again, while we were talking off air, that you really emphasized was accessibility. Like, you really seem to emphasize that you have a passion to make art accessible.
That's correct.
To the youth,
Right.
Let's put youth in air quotes because I'm not quite sure what that means anymore. But talk to me, in Mike's perfect world, how does the art movement make art more accessible to people younger than ourselves? People just, teenagers who are, let's face it, being a teenager can suck.
Absolutely.
Right? And we're always looking for things. As a matter of fact, we find our music, we find our poetry, we find our writing, we take these intense journeys of self-discovery.
Right.
At no other time are they as intense as they are when we're teenagers. So how does the art movement make art more accessible for people just starting out on that self journey?
Growing up here, I've been going to high school. I've been here since going to Durfee and going to Royal High School in El Monte, and there were clubs that would meet up, like poetry clubs and things like that, but there wasn't really an audience. And I think that's one major thing, that there has to be an audience in order to, for you to show your talents. And that's pretty much what the art movement primarily is based on. And linking together with, Poetrypalooza, there's so many hidden talents, I believe, within El Monte in itself because of its rich history in music. And there are wonderful art teachers and just natural God-given talent primarily within our area, and some people just choose to hide it, don't want to share it, or aren't comfortable sharing it, or because they're just really shy and they don't know who to show it to, and they don't want to feel weird, and they don't want to be objectified, like, oh, that's garbage art and this is great art, and so forth. And I think that the art movement in itself is something for everybody, regardless of age. Like as Kimberly mentioned, that there were teens and then there were grown folks out there. It might be a totally different demographic, but I think it's a melting pot. Like El Monte is a melting pot and a culture of, you have your Mexican, we have Vietnamese, major influences currently right now, and to tap into that, both cultures and combining it into one, I think it's one great concoction altogether, if you will.
You're listening to KMVR Mid-Valley Radio, the voice of the valley where content is king. This is an episode of Around the Valley. I'm having a conversation with Kimberly Cobian and Mike Mendoza. We're here to talk about Poetrypalooza, which is coming up August 16th at 4 p.m. right here in downtown El Monte. And we're going to talk about that right on the other side of this break. If you've been listening, we've been having a general conversation about poetry and art and the impact of the muse and the impact of accessibility. Coming back on the other side of the break, I want to talk a little bit more. We're going to bring it home. We're going to bring it local. We're going to talk about the local event. We're going to talk about the San Gabriel Valley stops on Poetrypalooza Tour 2014. So stay tuned right here. We'll be right back on the other side. You're listening to KMVR Mid-Valley Radio, the voice of the valley, where content is king. Where content is king. We are back from our short break. You're listening to Around the Valley right here on KMVR Mid-Valley Radio, the voice of the valley where content is king. I am sitting down with Kimberly Cobian and Mike Mendoza. They are here to speak about Poetrypalooza. We had a great introduction to the conversation on the other side of the break. We talked a little bit about what a muse is. We were able to define a muse. We talked a lot about accessibility to art. Especially for teenagers. And bringing it home a little bit, Kim, I would love it if you would tell me a little bit more about Poetrypalooza. I'm totally fascinated by it. And I'm hoping you could talk to me about the tour, some of the stops that are coming up, maybe one of the stops you've had. And of course, since we are here in the San Gabriel Valley and we are the voice of the valley, I would love to talk about the events that you have scheduled here in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, great. Yes. So Poetrypalooza, celebration of poetry and life in all its forms, be it music, art, performance, poetry, of course, in every aspect that it is, encouraging everybody to celebrate it, because what makes this world go round. I mean, I feel like if the crazy things that are happening around the world right now, I think it's the only thing that we can offer future generations, and some of the generations that are discouraged by how the world is turning out now. It gives everybody some peace and some hope.
I think that's Hope is a good word. Hope is a good word to use.
Yeah, and then like when Mike mentioned earlier that we want art to be accessible to the kids, to the teens. It's very important because what do they have? They just have the internet. They don't really have anywhere.
Don't forget our phones and our iPads. Come on.
They don't have anywhere to lean on and help them express themselves further than 140 characters. You know what I'm saying? It's just
that drives me up a wall. I cannot stand it when I get a text from somebody and they can't spell thank you. Right? TYNP. Come on, man. You couldn't throw in the extra 7 letters, Come on. That's way off topic. We can have another show on that, I'm sure. I want you to talk to me a little bit, if you may, Kim. Tell me about the Poetrypalooza 2014 tour. When does it start? When did it end? What are some of your stops? What are some of your highlights? And what are some of your challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So opening night was on Friday, August 1st at Holy Grounds Coffee and Tea in El Sereno, on the very cusp of the San Gabriel Valley. And it's 15 stops this year, the most we've had in our 4-year run.
How many stops were on your first year?
10.
Okay.
And then we moved up to 12. Now we're 15.
All right.
So August being the plentiful month that it is, we're going to have 15 stops. We're going as far west as Venice Beach, where we were last night, and as far east as Pomona. And we're going into the San Fernando Valley, too, for North Hollywood and Sylmar. It was a request to go to Sylmar. And going as southeast as Downey and Long Beach this year. So
now,
we're really excited.
Are you invited to some of these cities? Like, as you had mentioned, you got a connection in Sylmar. Hey, come on up and have a stop here in Sylmar. What are some of the requirements? If somebody wanted a stop for 2015 Poetrypalooza tour, they would call Kim and they would just say, hey, come on by my backyard, or how do you determine where you're going to stop?
Yeah, the way it works is we meet so many different people everywhere we go each year, and some of them, they come from other cities and to come see maybe a friend or someone that they're following, a band or a poet, and then they ask, hey, are you going to make a stop in this city maybe next year or later in this tour? And so we take that in consideration, and the guys and I and our main Palooza committee, when we start planning it in the late spring, we make a list of requests, and every year we get a few new requests. So One of them, we've been wanting to have this stop for a long time now, particularly because I am a board member of the New Vein Foundation, is El Monte, and that's the one we're talking about today. We want to highlight. El Monte is one of the 4 San Gabriel Valley stops that we're going to cover this year. Sure. One will be August 9th, Saturday, August 9th, in La Puente at Bridgetown DIY. The other one will be August 15th in Whittier at Hoff Books. El Monte will be August 16th. And we'll be in Pomona in the Arts District at the Daw Gallery on Friday, August 22nd.
Now, I'm a little slow when it comes to math, but you had mentioned that you have 15 stops.
Yeah.
And it's just August 1st through the 31st.
That's correct.
That's almost like a rock and roll tour schedule, right? I mean, 15 gigs in 31 days. That's pretty intense.
Poets are rock stars.
I'm telling you. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think their voices need to be heard just as much as any other band out there, as much as any musical performance. I mean, I give a lot of credit to a lot of writers, especially poets themselves, because I've gone to several open mics, and the commitment and dedication for them to come up on the stage and to present something, what they're feeling, you know, and what they've experienced.
Well, you play music, right?
Well, actually, I'm a DJ.
Okay, so same thing. You're a performer.
Yeah.
You know that just that moment of terror, getting up in front of people, you know?
The butterflies keep churning until the very last song kind of thing.
And sometimes you wish they were just butterflies.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because you're going to try a new cut tonight and you don't know how it's going to go over, right? You're going to try a new stanza. You added on to a poem that you've been working on. How's it going to go? I mean, on some level, you don't really care, which is why you keep pushing forward. But, you know, I mean, there's, like I said, there's just that stark terror getting in front of people.
There's just a whole bunch of spiritual growth that comes into it, too. Growth within yourself. And I think by hitting all these stops, like, it gives every artist or up-and-coming artist an opportunity to see, okay, that was a really, really cool experience. I think I could do that again.
Almost like a hatchling who feels the first ray of the sun coming out of the egg, you know?
Yeah.
And, okay, so we're talking about Poetrypalooza 2014 World Tour, San Gabriel Valley stops. You're looking forward to this stop coming up in El Monte. Tell me why. Tell me what's going on in El Monte. What do we have to look forward to here in El Monte at the stop?
Well, it'll be one of our few outdoor stops. I love it when we have an outdoor venue because it's more visible, and being the beautiful weather that we have in sunny California, everybody will be motivated to stay outside and create with everyone that's going on and enjoy the festivities. We are collaborating with the art movement, who have some experience, lots of experience, I would say, having a multicultural artistic experience to offer their community. And
now, is the art movement going to be providing music, or is there going to be do you have pieces that are going to be shown? Or
there are a few artists such as I believe Manny Lynx. I believe he's one of the greatest artists that walks around El Monte. You know, he's super talented and really humble about his work.
Does he have a preferred medium that he works in?
He does acrylic on canvas. And I know that's not really 100% poetry, but I mean it's poetry as far as putting ink to a canvas kind of deal, you know, and that's something that's special to us here in El Monte, you know. That's one of the main things as far as, I mean, we walk around here, there's a whole bunch of graffiti, and it's kind of weird and kind of offsetting, I guess, because there is beautiful graffiti out there. And,
absolutely.
There are some murals out here that we have within our community, and I want to get to know these guys because, you know, I want to transfer that kind of skill onto a canvas and for them to to see, for everybody to see it.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
We also have a whole bunch of talented bands coming out of high school. There are bands from high school that they you could hear them miles, probably like a couple blocks away, just jamming out in their garage.
And are any of these musicians going to be playing at El Monte, the Poetrypalooza?
I believe Efrain Okendo, he's one of my partners from the art movement. He'll be performing.
One of the co-founders.
One of the co-founders, yeah. He'll be performing along with one of my other good friends, Christy. They're doing this punk acoustic type deal, you know, that's heavily influenced over here in El Monte.
And I know that somebody just chuckled when they heard that. And if they chuckled at the idea of punk acoustic or acoustic punk, it's only because they've forgotten that punk is an attitude. It's not a genre.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and we need to remember that, especially here in Southern California.
Right.
You know, I think some of the greatest punk attitudes have come out of Southern California that have really, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you like it or not, they've influenced generations, and you know they've impacted cultures around the world, and we can't forget that.
Absolutely.
So if you found yourself chuckling at the phrase acoustic punk, I'm wagging my finger.
It almost sounds like oxymoron. Oxymoron.
Almost.
Exactly. That was
yeah. But again, you know, acoustic is a style. Punk is an attitude, man. It's not a genre. You know, and like I said, I think people, you know, like I was watching you when I asked you that question about the preferred medium of the artist you had mentioned, and you really hesitated, and I saw that you didn't really want to put him in this box, right?
Right.
And I get that. I get that. And that's why I said preferred medium, because I'm sure he has other things he does.
Some people like to stick to certain guidelines and, you know, and all that, but I mean, to me, art is art, whatever, however you want to portray it, however you want to speak it is, you know, I like to speak it through my hands, like picking out records and stuff like that.
It's really an expression of our hunt for the muse.
Yes,
right? And if the muse is that physical manifestation of inspiration, then I would think that art, whether it's music, whether it's poetry, is just an expression of that hunt. Because whether we're painters, whether we're sculptors, whether we're poets, whether we're musicians, we're still hunters, and we're still looking for the answer to the great elusive mystery, right?
Right.
To find it, you know, we're just being dragged along, you know, wherever the great magnet takes us, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit. We're getting ready to wind up here. We've only got about a minute to a minute and a half. So what I would like to do next is give you the opportunity to tell me about where people can find some information on Poetrypalooza 2014, a website, a Facebook site. How can we find more information?
Absolutely. We do have a Facebook page, Poetrypalooza, and you can also look up Zyzx Writers, ZZYZXWRITERZ on Facebook, with plenty of details and information about who is featuring where and when on the tour. There's still 12 stops to go, including El Monte on the 16th. So we have that, and a website, poetrypalooza.la.altervista.org.
That's all.
What about the El Monte art movement?
Oh,
I want people to check out the El Monte art movement as well.
Because the art movement, we have a Facebook page.
Access.
Yeah, we have a Facebook page as well. The art movement. You can find us there. We also have our Instagram at the art movement. EM, I believe, is our Instagram. So come check us out. We're there every last Thursday at the American Legion Hall, post 261 off of Peck Road. I believe that's like right across the street from Chuck E. Cheese. Can't miss us over there. We'll be posted outside again, so we will be out there again the last Thursday of August.
And let's not forget, the reason we're here today is to talk about the El Monte stop of Poetrypalooza Tour 2014, where poetry is life, and you can find them right here on the Valley Mall, right across from, where Lexington meets the Valley Mall. They'll be right across the street. There's also a Sally's Beauty Supply Institute or something along those lines right next to it. It's the Great Park with no name. right there on the Valley Mall. That's this Saturday, August 16th at 4 p.m., Poetrypalooza Tour 2014, the Great El Monte, California stop. You've been listening to Around the Valley right here on KMVR Mid-Valley Radio, the voice of the valley where content is king. And today I've been sitting with Kimberly Cobian and Mike Mendoza. We've been talking about Poetrypalooza. Thank you very much for your time, your energy, and of course, as always, your participation.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
My name is Kenneth Ferreira. This is KMVR Mid-Valley Radio. Thank you for listening, and good night.